Welcome to the Pixel Scandal Nerdcast, episode 54. I'm Kurt.
Nightson.
Handor.
Oreztes.
End of line.
Tonight's spotlight is going to be on GMless gaming, creating your own opposition or making your own problems. Going on to end of line, do we have any announcements for what's up and coming?
Yeah, we only have one announcement today, and that's our SIP episode. We were planning on having our next episode of SIP this coming Tuesday. However, we have a couple folks that will not be able to make it, and so we're pushing the episode back until June 18th, which will also be on a Tuesday. So that'll be Tuesday, June 18th at 6 p.m. will be Agents of SIP, Supernatural Investigation Program. If you haven't seen the previous two episodes, they are up on YouTube and on our they're up on YouTube. So check it out.
Mm-hmm. Well, now we're moving on to what we're excited with, and because I'm talking, I'm going to get started off with Baldur's Gate 3 trailer released this week. Yay!
Yeah.
Yeah.
No gameplay, just
don't care. It's fine.
Yeah.
I've seen
They're
enough
working
of
on
the
it.
trailer to know I'm going to love it. Well,
Yeah.
okay, two things. Focuses on Mind Flayers. The trailer was awesome. Second thing, it's made by the company that made Original Sin or Divinity,
Yeah.
which was basically a D&D role-playing game.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I saw a comment on YouTube for the trailer that basically ran down if BioWare had announced this, I'd be upset and worried.
yeah, pretty much.
But it's this company, I'm super stoked.
Yeah.
So
Now watch them drop the ball.
I don't think they will.
I don't know.
Divinity 2 was absolutely incredible, and it was a back to basics roots MMO.
Yeah.
Or RPG MMO.
Yeah.
Since it was co-op. I guess it's not an MMO, sorry. It was a co-op. But,
Yeah.
That game was handled really right. It didn't sensationalize anything. It really was meant to be and worked like you were playing an actual long-term campaign.
Yeah.
They released like a 20-minute, how we got the rights to Baldur's Gate 3 video, which was quirky and weird and had so many little comments in it that I'm very confident that it is going to be a labor of love one way or another.
Yeah, I saw that with the developer, and he was like, the reactions in the office when they announced it were mixed. Half the people were super stoked, and the other half were like the younger people who were like, what is this? Why is everybody freaking out about it?
Yeah. It makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm super excited.
Yeah.
I expect us to talk all kinds more about it as it gets closer to release.
The main villain is going to be a mind flayer named Jedediah. I'm calling it.
And his brothers Ezekiel and
Ezekiel.
Samuel.
All right. Moving on. Oh, really? Veronica Mars is coming back to Hulu?
Yeah, they just announced that I think it's the first 3 seasons are available to watch to catch up.
It looks dark, too.
Of the original Veronica Mars?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
There's a new
releasing
season,
the original.
though.
Yeah, they're releasing the original seasons on Hulu so you can catch up, right? And then they're redoing like some real legit shit.
Is it still going to have Kristen Bell in it?
Yeah,
But
it's
it's
got
like-
Logan. It's got all those guys. All of them are.
I don't care about the other ones.
What about Weevil?
I don't know who that is.
None of those people have had a career after that show, aside from her.
They've been literally sitting around waiting for this call.
They're so hyped to be able to pay their mortgages on.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. I missed it the first time around. I think Kate watched them all on Netflix or something like that.
Well,
when they were on
did
there,
that. They did that movie, right? And wasn't it like
Mhm.
absolute garbage?
It was this. It was
Really
the
bad.
same thing that happened with. It was kind of the same deal that happened with the Nathan Fillion. I can't think of it right now. Right,
Firefly and Serenity.
Yeah, where the fans are like, "Come on, man! We gotta. Where's our
Where's our ending?
Yeah, we need closure. And so a few years later, they released the movie, and it was pretty bad. And then people are like,
But you think if you had 2 years to think of an arc to close out your television show, you think your writers would be able to execute that? Which makes me worried about this new series too, because if they're using the same writers, and after 2 years they couldn't think of a solid movie script, that's problematic. But I'm hopeful. I like the show. But
here's the thing. Every single time, and granted, I'm only thinking of 2 occasions, which is Firefly and Veronica Mars. Both occasions, the writers have had 2 years to think about something to give closure to their audience, and both of them essentially failed their audience.
Serenity was
I think
amazing.
Serenity was great.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anyone complained about Serenity.
Yeah, it was
My
really
only
good.
complaint about Serenity is that in 5 years, when they do the Firefly reunion, Wash is going to be dead.
Yeah.
So
I mean, yeah. I don't know if we have to say spoilers on that one. It's pretty old.
no.
He's a leaf in a wind.
Yeah, he's a leaf on the wind. Everybody knows that.
The leaf got stabbed.
All right.
So who's got this next thing here?
Duh.
Oh, what? Oh,
Handor.
yeah. Okay, so definitely digging in, trying to create my own campaign. Been talking to my Pixel Scandal friends here. And I'll tell you what, man. It's like right now I have one single sentence at the beginning of like you know what I mean? And it's been sitting there for 3 days. It's an explosion, an amalgamation of ideas that I cannot for some reason put to words. It's just crazy.
Well,
All I want to do is I want to take ideas and just throw them at the paper and then put it together later. I can't even do that.
well, let me give you a tiny bit of advice.
Okay.
Start really small. Just prep your first session, because they may not like it. Like, it may not go off well, and then you don't want to have planned like a 10-session game, and then you look back and you're like, man, what do I do with all this?
Right.
So like get that first session set up and then see if it goes well, and if it does, if it lands, then write the rest of the campaign that way.
You need a really strong first line to the backstory of the world.
I don't know if that's even necessary.
It is. It's totally true. Like in The Gunslinger, the man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed. That's all you need to know. That's the entire 8-book storyline. Is the gunslinger and the man in black. Done.
Crushed it. But that's cool. So did you decide on a system?
Oh yeah, I'm totally using that system you showed me, which was
You're gonna try Fate?
Yeah, Fate.
Oh, dude, you're gonna need so many new dice that you don't have.
Oh yeah, you have to get fudge dice.
Or just use D6s.
It's a lot.
I have them in my Amazon basket.
Yeah. You guys can share. I ended up buying so many Fate dice that just sit in a drawer and never get touched.
Well, you don't need many.
You know what? I would be happy to touch those fudge dice as soon as you say, "Hey, let's play Dresden again."
Yeah. I kind of want to revisit Fate again, since now that I've explored other systems, because we played Dresden Files before we ever touched a PBTA game.
Or
and I think
any story game bullshit.
Yeah, or any story bullshit game. And so I feel like I've learned some things about how to run a game like Fate, where the system is easy to break, but it's easy to break because the system it's not trying to prevent you from breaking it. It's about the story, not the game. And so,
and I think your players have learned a lot also about like storytelling from the player side.
Yeah.
And just doing cool shit story-wise and not caring so much about the rules for everything.
For sure. Yeah, because it can definitely get bogged down in the +2 fishing, right? Where you're looking for those +2s. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I'm excited to hear how your game goes, Handor.
Thank you.
Yeah, we will definitely have to keep touching base on this as we go. Okay, so next I'm seeing Final Fantasy VII Remake. Has there been something new?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's been a bunch of stuff coming out about it. It's expected to be shown at E3. It's one of the few games that have not been leaked yet. So they're going to be doing the Tifa reveal, hopefully. and there's a lot of speculation as to whether they're going to. For the people who have played the original Final Fantasy VII, Tifa had a very unique figure, and underneath all those polygons. And so now they're trying to. There's a bunch of stuff online saying like, are they going to change her? They're going to make her look more like the Advent Children Tifa. Is she going to look like the actual Tifa from 7? But I love Final Fantasy VII. It's a guilty pleasure. I fully realize it's one of the most overrated games ever made.
Oh yeah.
But it's still one of my favorites. It was the first game I ever played on PlayStation.
Yeah.
I just have a lot of fond memories of that game. So I'm looking forward to it. I will definitely be getting a collector's edition if it's available.
Yeah, Final Fantasy VII was my first ever RPG. And I honestly don't think I ever finished it.
Well, now's your chance.
Yeah.
It's going to be coming out apparently as 2 separate games. The first part and the second part. That's going to be
split it into 2 movies now.
Well, why sell it to you once when they can sell it to you twice?
They're selling it to you as seasons. So it'll be probably two $30 games, is my guess.
But you know where the split is. If you've ever heard the phrase Final Fantasy VII followed by any other words at the end of it involving a specific female character, you know where the split's going to be.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And then it'll be a huge cliffhanger. What happens?
What's going to happen?
I had no idea. Actually, we joke about it
bring
before.
a Phoenix down?
For thousands of gamers who have never played the original, they might be very upset.
Oh, yeah.
That brings an interesting point. Is it now gauche to spoil the game again with it coming back?
Yeah, we're going to have to call spoilers again.
It's like, no. I'm not talking about the new one. I'm talking about the original.
It could be different. They may be making changes.
It might be different. Yeah.
All right. And then on the topic of new games, E3 is what, next weekend?
The 11th through the 13th.
Yeah.
So
this week.
Yeah.
I have not followed anything on the road to E3, so I'm kind of.
Well, the good thing about it is if you go on Google right now and type E3 2019 leaks, it's all there. So
that's convenient.
Yeah, everything, like so much stuff has already been leaked. There's Cyberpunk 2077 leaks. They've got the regular edition, the collector's edition. Apparently, even the regular edition is going to come with the rule set for the Cyberpunk 2020 tabletop game.
Oh, okay.
If you're interested in that at all. There's been leaks of I think it's called Elder Rings, which is a collaboration between From Software and George R.R. Martin. So think, Dark Souls, Game of Thrones type deal, which might be interesting.
Yeah.
Added to the list of things he's doing other than writing his books.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a Nino Kun. I probably should have called spoilers on this before I just start spitting out everything that's going to be leaked in 2 days.
Yeah. No, it's too late now, buddy.
2 days. Yeah, but there's a Nino Kuni remake, a new Tales game. So a bunch of good stuff. Wow. Interesting stuff.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll see what this week brings.
But of course, I'm interested in E3 spoilers because I don't care about spoilers. So
I don't know if it's marketing. You could be spoiled for marketing.
Yeah, if you were spoiling what happens in the game, then I could see that being a problem. But if you're just saying hey, this is what's going to be announced,
well, I have to imagine some people. I have to imagine some people watch the E3 stream just to be like, oh, what's next? What's next? This is going to be so good.
Yeah,
I have to imagine it. There's a massive difference between announcing, there's probably going to be a John Wick 4, or you know what I mean, or saying this is what happens at the end of, whatever. There's got to be,
Yeah. The thing I'm definitely most excited about is that they're getting an ARPG Darksiders game, which the theme of that
the universe definitely speaks to it.
Yeah, it lends itself really well to that kind of gameplay, but there's not enough information about it.
Oh, you said ARPG.
Sounds amazing. Yeah. Okay. Action RPG like Diablo.
Yeah. What you said got mixed up in between my ears and my brain, and you said one thing, but I heard VR Dark Souls, and I was like, why would you ever do that to yourself?
Are you kidding me?
That's what nightmares are made of.
It'd be amazing in VR.
That reminds me.
Although you'd break all your tables and shit from rolling around the fountain. You destroy your home.
Chris Farley, the whole room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just roll around.
Wear one of those force feedback backpacks and just if you die in VR, you die.
That reminds me, Nightson, what'd you think of that Node VR video I sent you?
That is disgusting. Like,
Isn't that amazing?
I don't know if you linked it to everyone or not, but no, these are the guys who used to do Digital Corridors as part of them, and
Video Game High School.
yeah,
Stuff like that.
Freddie W's old group.
Mm-hmm.
They
Brandon.
are making a huge, crazy physics-based VR system that plays into the new
Oh, yeah, I saw that video.
the new Steam headset thing. I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but it had all the same feelings of playing Half-Life for the first time and going, holy crap, I can break a box or I can push things around. Or
What's it called?
We'll link it.
It's, I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but it's like right now it's in the top 25 of most anticipated games on Steam right now.
Boneworks?
Okay.
Boneworks, yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You find a hidden balloon gun and just shoot yourself with so many balloons you get lifted out of the stage.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to check out the video on YouTube. Node, Boneworks on Valve, something like that. Where they're working with them. It's absolutely incredible. It takes everything that you've seen in VR and just makes it look horrible.
It's
It
VR
honestly
too.
does.
It's
Yeah,
VR too.
It really is.
So
It's
that you
insane.
guys think this will be the technology that'll shift VR?
Oh,
It's if it really comes down to price point, but if they get a decent price point on it, it's definitely gonna keep it going.
Okay.
you need to watch the video.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, moving on. What have we played recently? I personally, because of the announcement, have been playing Baldur's Gate 1, the original. I bought the enhanced edition a million years ago when they first came out, and it was more just I want to own this. I probably will never touch this, but I want it to be there if I ever feel the need. And I, felt the need, downloaded it, installed it, started playing. And I know you guys are all familiar with, or maybe not Handor here, but the concept of Thaco, or two-hit armor class of 0.
Yeah.
Unlike more modern D&Ds where it's, it's hitting a target number of your target's armor class, it's the reverse. So you start at 20 and you go down, and that is the number to hit, and you add your enemy's armor to it. Super convoluted. People hated it. It's amazing that it lasted a second edition. But anyway, so I'm looking at that, and so Thaco is they use second edition D&D for that game, so they actually have Thaco on your character sheet. And I'm like, man, I'm not hitting. What is going on? So I look at my character sheet, and it's got my to hit was 20. I'm like, that's weird. So I look at my bonuses, and I had +2 proficiency bonus. I'm like, oh, okay, sure, that makes sense. -2 strength bonus. What the hell is going on? Is something bugged with my game? Why am I've got like an 18 strength. Why do I have a -2 to hit? Finally, after like looking online, couldn't find anything, playing, it was like, oh, they're flipping it to make it easier for me to understand. So I get a +2 to strength, which reduces my Thaco from 20 to 18, and I didn't know how to use quarterstaves, so it was +2, bringing it back to 20.
So you had a 0 chance of hitting?
Well, yeah, 1 out of 20 chance of hitting with the stupid staff.
That's funny.
Yeah, so I've been enjoying it. I haven't got very far, but it is just as fun as it was, 20 years ago. So
Jeez, man.
That's awesome.
They did a really good job on the remastered version too.
yeah, well, the biggest thing that was nice is they actually fused the engine from Baldur's Gate 2 into the first game. So you could start the game with all the kits and classes and spells and abilities that you got in the second game and just start from them right from the jump.
Nice.
So, all right, who's up next here? I'm guessing this is Handor.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so I guess the new season of Diablo 3 started while I was in California. And as soon as I got back, everyone's like, hey, how you doing? What do you blah, blah, blah. And they're like, all right, let's start this. So I created a character and kind of sick of it. And this season is every single season they do like a you get extra caches for your bounties, or you can I don't know. But anyways, this season's extra is that you don't need the litany and wailing or whatever. I think it's litany of the Undaunted and the Wailing Host to have the LON build, the all ancients. So every single piece of ancient gear you have increases your damage by percent amount. I'm not making sense to anyone. So
again, Blizzard's idea of an interesting season is to just give you something where you wear more uniques and you do a little bit more damage.
Well, no, they removed the two components that you need.
No, you just get them by default.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So basically, they made it to where your character has two items equipped in the background, but you don't have to equip.
Yeah. And so what I ended up doing was Rando ended up convincing me to play a hardcore character. So I'm now playing a hardcore Demon Hunter, and I'm scared to death to do anything. Scared to death to leave town. So, yeah, that's what I'm dealing with that right now.
RP
Trying to find something else to play. Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
I've said it the last 3 seasons. I'll say it again. They are going to all extents to make sure that they have those seasons be as creative as humanly possible by changing some values in a script somewhere.
Mm-hmm. No. Yep, heavily laden in sarcasm. Thank you.
I'm waiting for my Twitch Prime free Necromancer before I go back to Diablo. If they ever give the Necromancer for free, I will reinstall Diablo just to play with it for a little bit. But
they'll never do that.
I know.
Yeah, I don't see that.
I'm fully aware that they will never do that.
And there are 3 10 times better ARPGs out there right now than Diablo 3. Every way,
except for the fact that I can't stand Path.
Even Path, Grim Dawn is still way better. Hell, Titanfall or whatever it's called is still
Titan
better.
Quest.
Titan Quest is still better than Diablo 3.
Oh, did they make
Torchlight 2 is still better than Diablo 3.
Yeah. It's
What's
hard
the
though
new
because
one that's coming out?
I'm so used to D3 though. It's so familiar.
That's a bad excuse to play a terrible game.
I know. I'm fully aware.
And to be fair, this is someone who's clocked 1 billion hours in Diablo 3 and has enjoyed it, but it's just they abandoned that game 2.5-3 years ago. Like they gave up on it entirely.
Which is crazy considering they've got nothing coming.
Yeah.
To the point where people are seriously worried about that as a company.
No, they have a mobile game, bro.
Yeah, mobile, dude. It's all about that mobile.
Yeah.
Is it Lost Ark?
Diablo 3 is a dead horse.
So what's our next thing here? Did anyone see John Wick 3?
No.
I have not either.
I'm against animal abuse, so I'm boycotting it. Just
I did rent John Wick 1 and 2 on Hulu or Amazon, I think, and we're rewatching them. So we rewatched the first one. Now we need to watch the second one, so that my partner will have context when I drag him to see the third one that he gives no shits about. But he enjoyed the first one. He liked it.
So Gidget does not want to go. So when you go, let me know and I'll come with you.
Okay. Likewise.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now.
Maybe Wednesday.
I'm glad that we're taking time out of our podcast to prep our
make plans.
Yeah. See John Wick.
Hey, everyone else is welcome to join us.
Yeah. You're all welcome to join us.
We will post details on pixelscandal.com of the showing, the theater, and the time that we will be at.
We're so shitty that no one will ever show up.
So I actually started playing something again. I have not played a video game and enjoyed it in a long time, actually, like several months. And Oreztes finally dragged me in to play Final Fantasy 14 again. And I got in there and I just started grinding through the stupid MSQ, the main story quest, and got to a point where I decided, you know what? I'm just going to accept that I'm never going to finish this and just play low-level characters. So I went and started leveling a ninja, and that's been super fun. So,
If you've accepted you're never going to do it, just accept it as a lost cost. I'll give you $20 to buy the MSQ skip potion.
that's okay.
And
I will pitch in. I'll pitch in on that. We can start it.
And then you can actually play a character with us, so we don't have to literally have characters we're not getting XP to play with you.
I did a single quest today. I did one of them.
Good job.
One MSQ quest today.
Yeah. You need to at least get
500 that I have to do.
You need to at least get to Stormblood so you can unlock Samurai and Machinist.
I don't know. I'm really digging Ninja. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's fun now because you're level 32 and don't have buttons yet.
Yeah.
It gets too many buttons.
Ninja gets very complicated later.
Oh, no. Okay.
It's one of the highest skill cap characters.
Yeah. And you're definitely.
And it was my main last expansion. It was my main. It's a lot of fun though.
You're definitely going to want that new Machinist tech when the expansion drops also.
Oh, yeah. I certainly want to be a machine gun cowboy with a robot.
Yeah.
But yeah, something I did find while playing Final Fantasy is that the time it takes to get into a duty finder, into the dungeon queue, is the exact amount of time it takes to do a single Magic the Gathering game. So I queue up in the Dungeon Finder, I play one game of Magic the Gathering, and then I jump back. So now I'm back playing Magic the Gathering again.
I don't understand. Magic games must be really quick now. Do you just have like turn one combos, turn one win conditions and stuff like that?
No. I just have really long queues. It's like a 20-minute
DPS.
Yeah, DPS queue. So it's like a 20-minute queue. I play one game of Magic. By the time that's over, hey, the thing started. But yeah, so that's what I've been doing lately.
All right. So moving right along, we're going to go into our spotlight topic, which for today is GMing or GMless gaming, and kind of the concept of creating your own problems, your own opposition.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess first off, what is a GMless game?
So a GMless game is a game where all of the players sort of share responsibility, and something in the game sort of drives the narrative forward. So this happens with story games a lot, where you're asked to sort of answer prompts or draw cards and do what they tell you. Dialect is a good example of a GMless game. The game itself, the rules sort of drive the story forward while asking you to answer prompts and set scenes based on those prompts. There is some debate on what GMless versus GM full means. I'm not going to get into that too much now, but the only difference I'm going to say is a GM full game is probably something where everyone sort of shares the responsibility of driving the story forward, and in a GM-less game, the game itself, like the rules, sort of share take on the goal of moving the story forward. So, like generating prompts, the rules are very strict about like scene structure and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Could you equate that to like, say, an open world game, right, where you control the narrative or the ending of the game, and then the types of games where there are the hidden boxes where you run through the box, right, and that spawns the narrative, that spawns the next scene, or what are they called? Those invisible boxes.
Checkpoints.
Checkpoint.
You're talking about video game, like Skyrim type stuff, or what?
Yeah, just like, does that cross over at all?
Spawn anchors.
I mean, video games tend to have different language to sort of describe that stuff, because obviously the video game itself is managing all of the stuff like a GM would do. Right. So those tend to be like open world, linear, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And not most of those. We end up sharing a lot of that language, but oftentimes it doesn't translate really well. Like trying to use sandbox or open world game for a regular RPG, like a tabletop RPG, doesn't always translate quite well, because most RPGs are like that, because you can kind of do it whatever you want. Right. And so a lot of that language doesn't translate very well back and forth. But
a bit closer. Oh, good.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say a bit closer of a video game reference of if you're playing an open world style game with a bunch of people and you come up with some emergent concept that isn't directly enforced or created by the game. Like if you just decide in GTA you're gonna all steal cars and do donuts for 20 minutes, that is you creating your own narrative, as it were.
Right.
Yeah.
Might not be a very exciting narrative in that particular case, but you know there isn't a GM telling you what to do.
Right.
That's
so
the
like,
reason Neebs Gaming got most of their fame. Just FYI.
So in a GMless game, you end up the players share a lot of the responsibility, and the game sort of drives the story forward. What ends up happening though is some games will ask the players to come up with the opposition, and anytime you have to come up with the opposition for your own character, basically you create a problem and then immediately solve it. It can feel really unfulfilling.
If you got a problem, I'll solve it. Check out.
And so I kind of wanted to talk about like what are some games that do that? You know, how have you guys tried to get how do you feel about it? Have you, do you have any other ideas on how you could deal with that problem, like passing the responsibility to other players? And so that's basically what we were going for with the topic.
I feel like I try to create my own opposition in every game I play. I'm creating some opposition of some type.
Well, I know some level in most games, you if you are creating a backstory, you are technically creating some opposition to come across, a villain or problem from your previous encounters that the GM in that game will pull in and use against you, or against you, but as a narrative device. So it's not too weird to be coming up with your own vices, your own issues, your own villains.
Right.
Yeah. Some systems even allow you to do that during character creation, like with the Savage Worlds. If you take the rival or enemy hindrance at character creation,
you're being a lot more direct with no. This is my villain. I want you to make him fight me.
Right.
Or you could. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think it's even broader than that, because pretty much all hindrances are you creating opposition for yourself. Like if you take an addiction, or you take, a disability or something like that. Like you're creating, like you pick a blind character, you're creating the kind of problem. You're telling the GM, I want X problems, but the trouble when you don't have that GM there to sort of like interpret and make those problems unique and interesting in a way that you didn't expect is, okay, cool, you're blind, tell me how that's a problem for you. Okay, how do you get around it? Like you end up having to do all of the work, and so you're just sort of talking your way through it, and it doesn't feel like you solved the problem because you came up with it and solved it. And some of the ways that I've seen it handled really well is when you're able to just pass that on to someone else, right? Another player, and say like, well, let's do this scene. You take on the role of my rival that I created. And then that way, at least it doesn't feel like I'm describing everything and just talking to you. But even in games with a GM, like if you're playing Dungeon World or playing a more, a game where there's more disclaiming of narrative control, like if you're giving the players a lot more freedom to come up with what's wrong. Like I've done this in games where I'll say, oh, what's the worst thing that could happen to you right now? And then it's, you get stuck with, well, crap. Okay, I guess I'll come up with something bad for myself. And it I don't know. It always feels a little less exciting when you have to come up with your own problem. Have you have you guys seen that happen in games? I know I've done it to you.
Well, it's not a GMless game, but the creating your own opposition thing is something I felt like 10 Candles lends itself really well with. Even though it's not a GM, it gives an example of that, where you do the more interesting thing, not necessarily the thing that's optimal for you to be successful, which is kind of interesting in a game where you cannot be successful. The whole end of it, you're going to lose. So there's absolutely no reason not to do the interesting thing, even if that is a negative.
To be fair, 10 Candles for the first 75% of the games might as well be considered a GM-less game.
It is, really.
GM is not really doing anything.
Yeah, you're narrating.
Yeah.
which is what you do in Dialect too. But you, at least in Dialect, you're playing a character, whereas in Tin Candles, you're not. You're not playing a character. You're kind of just a narrator. But it's not like you're actively against the party. You get to just have some narration control, but no more or less than the players do. You're not in any kind of. You're not like a god or anything. We get to make decisions the same way. So there's no power. There's no like an uneven power shift, I would say, in that game.
And I find it's interesting what you just said. You're against the party. I mean, I feel like that's a completely separate discussion for a different show, but I don't think the GM should ever be against the party.
You shouldn't ever be against the party. And I've played with GMs where that's the case, where they feel like their role is to, like, it's almost like it's I'm not winning unless I'm almost killing the party.
Mm-hmm.
I've had games like that. I kind of also get that mentality, but I definitely don't agree with it. You should definitely be rooting for the party. And I kind of feel like the GM's responsibility is kind of like a movie director, right? Mm-hmm. Your job is to make sure that the movie's entertaining.
Yeah,
that's your responsibility. If you want to know your success criteria, it's people walking away from the team having played and done something interesting and fun. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's your success.
And so I was going to say an interesting point to come across that is when you don't have someone to be that director, when you're literally 4 people around the table, like in that case, if you have a concept or whatnot, it's kind of the other 3 people who need to step up and be that director or be that part to keep things flowing smoothly.
And that's kind of a challenge with the GMless game, though. You're kind of hoping that the overwhelming majority of the table are kind of a little bit more outspoken and creative people. And not everyone is.
Yeah.
If you have a table where you have several people who don't feel confident enough to be outspoken about what they'd like to see happen, or they're not exactly creative and they just kind of do very generic, uninteresting things, it can be a drag. Whereas if you have a creative and interesting GM that can drive that space, it's likely going to be successful. With a GMless game, you're gambling a little bit that the players at the table are in a position to make that work.
Actually, that's a good point. In standard, your standard trad games where you have your GM, if there only needs to be 1 out of the 5 of you, 1 out of the 6 of you who needs to be that yes and person.
Sure.
Right. And in a GMless game, you're kind of all on the hook to carry that weight.
Yeah.
I just realized a perfect example of like you saying being a director or a writer and having a GM that's against the party. It reminds me so much of, like, are you gonna, like, is your GM a what's the guy that did I just brain farted on his name, that did Game of Thrones? That whole there you go. George, the guy killed everyone, right? So if your idea of being against the party is to kill all the players and create, a hero-less campaign, then you're George R. Martin or whatever. But if you want to be with them, I imagine you'd be much more like Tolkien, and from that created Lord of the Rings, where almost everyone's a hero, and you have these massive shifts in story and these crazy arcs of excitement and dread and so on and so forth. That's just what it reminded me of when Enderline was explaining that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Oh no, I was just agreeing that that could be the difference between someone who's for the party and against them. But like getting back to, like, when you see it in a GMless game, I know we all played Fiasco, where Fiasco's does a lot of the building opposition in the setup phase, where you're like rolling the dice and picking your needs and picking your relationships between each other. That sort of helps to build a lot of the opposition that you're going to see in the scenes. And so you use those when you set scenes in Fiasco. Like, I know that there are people that struggle with Fiasco because it's real wide open, right? Like
Yeah,
you get
like
into a scene
me.
and it's and
I
so
was super uncomfortable during that game. It was, to be fair, we played it like 5 years ago, and I hadn't played any other story game bullshit games. I was just like purely trad. So going into a game where it's like you're literally just making relationships with the people around the table, I was just like, I have no idea what's happening right now.
And no, not everyone's comfortable with role playing. In a game like Fiasco, that's the whole point.
mm-hmm. It's an
So
improv
you
exercise.
have to role play.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be comfortable doing that. And I'd say most people, unless you're playing with friends that you're super comfortable with, and then they're not going to feel comfortable playing a game like Fiasco.
Yeah. And
Although
I
it's a
think-
cool game.
I think part of what makes Fiasco a little like it saves you on this problem is that you're dragging other people into the scene that also have needs. Like they have needs that are established by that setup, right? And so their actions are going to be the thing that changes, right? The thing that's unique and surprises you. Even if you come into it knowing like, okay, my problem is that I need the bag or whatever. I need to get this guy into the wood chipper by the end of this scene, and if I can't, then something's wrong. But the other guy's like, well, I don't want to be in the wood
Fargo?
chipper. Yeah,
That is a very relatable issue.
yeah. And so like the two players are at odds with each other usually, or the two characters are at odds with each other usually, and so that ends up forming the opposition in the scene. I'm trying to think
Go
of
ahead.
games. Oh, go ahead.
Jot down wood. I'm just gonna jot down wood chipper in my for my campaign.
I'm gonna guess that's your accomplice in the wood chipper there.
Yeah.
But so like there are other games like Dialect. They do a really good job of sort of setting scene structure around the core conceit of the game. And so even though you may be introducing conflict during scenes and creating problems for yourselves during scenes, you end up with that's the problem or the conflict in the scene is not necessarily the goal of the scene, so it doesn't feel empty because the goal is to see how the word is used. And I'm trying to think of if there's any games that specifically have you create your own opposition where it feels unfulfilling. Have you guys had that experience in any games where we, go to build out the scene and then realize, oh shoot, I've just written a villain and I have a perfect solution to solve it, and so there's really no conflict in the scene?
Not really, because generally when we're doing something like that and I realize there's a perfect excuse, I will metagame in a way to have that not be a viable option anymore.
Mm. Okay, so like, can you remember an example of something that happened like that?
Not specifically. I just know, like, because when we're playing games, I kind of spend a lot of time like in my head going over what I'm going to be doing next and what my actions are going to be. So anytime anything is presented that could be an opposition, if I'm like, okay, this will handle that, I just won't do that.
Mm. Okay, to try to keep it interesting.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's more fun to me. But then again, I'm always the kind of person who's like, no, don't use your bennies. Let that fail go through. Like, fail at the dice roll. Take the snake eyes. Like,
yeah,
psychic explode. I don't care. That's going to be cool. Do it. So yeah, I mean, if there's an easy, obvious answer, it's like, just don't do that, and then it'll be more interesting for everybody. Something cool might happen.
I mean, that's a good way to look at it. I know when I play story games like what was it? The name of it? It's it's the Last Girl Standing, I think is what it's called. Final Girl. Oh, the Final Girl. You end up creating like 15 characters, and it's a slasher flick. So, but in that game, one person takes turns being the director or the bad guy. And so you end up sort of sharing the GM duties around the table. And so you're not necessarily creating your own opposition, but when it's definitely in your head when you're building all of the 15 characters, like, ooh, I definitely want a scene where someone gets, runs up the stairs. So then you like make someone that they're going to run up the stairs and get killed upstairs, right? And so a lot of those games where you're in control of a lot of the you can sort of like foreshadow, right? You end up doing these things where you build it because you know it's going to look cool later, even if you end up being the one that has to do that scene.
That sounds kind of interesting. That's like a Dead by Daylight RPG.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or like a Until Dawn, the tabletop game.
But originally when I started thinking about this topic was because I was writing my game Forest Mother, and the first iteration of it had you create your forest location. It had you create the danger that was threatening your forest location, and then had you go off and fix that overcome that danger. And it became really rote, right? Like you would create dangers that you just knew you were good at, or you would feel like, okay, cool, I wrote the thing. All right, great, I beat it. Yay, I beat this thing I knew was coming. And so it felt a little unfulfilling when we would go to play it. And so I've been testing a bunch of ways to sort of make that danger feel a little more surprising, like having everybody write them in secret and then shuffle them up and put them face down so you discover them. Make it so you kind of move around, so you have to work together to overcome them. So even if like you end up overcoming the one you wrote, someone else is also there. So that's something I've been trying to solve, is like how do you write the structure so that you don't end up creating your own opposition and then having to overcome it.
So I've never written a game and I don't GM a whole lot, and by a whole lot I mean 2 games in 10 years. Why is that on the creator of the game or the GM to come up with that? Why can't you, expect the player to, if they want to play a game where it's going to be super straightforward and it's like, oh yeah, my opposition is I'm allergic to bees, and it's like, how do you fix it? I don't know. How do I not be allergic to bees? It's don't like, if the player wants to do something straightforward that they're going to immediately be able to overcome and they're going to have a bad experience with it, that's kind of on the player.
Yeah. That's true. Like how much do you leave up to the group to solve? And that's something that I've always struggled with games like Fiasco, where a lot of what's going to happen is up to the group, right? Like you're sort of, if you're familiar with improv, you can handle Fiasco, but if you're not, like you said, Oreztes, you are completely lost when you start playing Fiasco. And so making choices about how much should the game decide for you and how much should be up to the players to sort of build out as the game goes. It can be a delicate balance, because you don't want the game to seem sort of unfulfilling. Like you don't want the story to feel flat, but then you also don't want to restrict them so much that they feel like they're not doing anything. And so it's been an interesting trial as I sort of try to write GMless games. Something I found really interesting. There's a game called Vast and Starlit by Epidiah Revichol. And I actually have a game a hack of it that I wrote that I need to release as soon as I finish Forest Mother. But that game is more on the like GM full end, where everyone basically you create your character, your primary character, and then every time there's going to be a scene, one person is the like lead character in that scene, and their character goes in that scene. Everyone else gets to either bring their normal character, or they can just make up NPCs and play the NPCs in those scenes. And then as soon as something dangerous or difficult happens to the lead in that scene, you freeze. All of the people there ask you a question, like they basically give you a hard choice, right? And then you just do a cliffhanger. And you go to another scene, and that player gets to think about which one of those things they're going to take, right? Like, say your character's running and you're going to jump over a gap. Everyone else there might be like, oh, well, you could make it, but you'd have to lose your pack. And like someone else would be like, oh, you fall in the friggin' ravine, man. But there's something cool down there. Or someone else will come up with another thing. And then that player gets to pick which one they like, right? But we cut, and then we go to a different scene, and then when that scene's over, maybe we come back, or maybe we bounce around. And so it's got this weird, like, everyone is kind of GMing everyone all the time. And so you're not really creating your own opposition because everyone is trying to like do it for everyone else. It's sort of like a table full of GMs all trying to run 4 games at once.
That's cool. But when you said fall into a pit, I had flashbacks of spending a year and a half leveling a monk.
Trying to get over a pit.
Spending all of my everything I had into jump because I failed 5 times in a row to clear a 5-foot pit at level 1. So how does, talking about GMless games, like the most recent example I can think of is, to me, would be like Starcrossed from Alex Roberts.
Sure.
So how does Starcrossed handle?
So Starcrossed
opposition?
builds. It has scenes, right? Where it basically has scene prompts. So the first scene is an introduction, right? And you have to do an introduction. And then on your character sheet, there's 2 characters in Starcrossed. There's the lead and the follow. The lead has to go first, but I think the follow gets to decide when the scene ends. So it's the top and the bottom. The bottom has all the power. And so, but you have different moves on your sheets. So like the lead has an intentional touch, and you mark it off. You only do that once per scene. But the follow has things like an unintentional touch, right? And so you have different goals or different actions you can kind of take during a scene. And you want to try to hit all those moves because you add up points, right? So every time you end a scene, you sort of tally up like how many of these things did I hit during this scene, and at the end you count up everyone's stars or both players' stars, and that's like how strong of a relationship you formed during it. So it guides you into these, like, here are the conflicts you should try to hit, right? Like try to touch them accidentally, or try to reveal something or about yourself, or try to accidentally reveal something about yourself. And so it gives you prompts basically to lead the scene, and you're trying to hit as many as you can before the follow ends the scene. So that's kind of how it builds that conflict. It's prompts. The conflict is the moves. It plays out pretty well. And it does have the same issue, I think, if you're not familiar with that kind of game, and especially if you're not familiar with duet games, where the first couple scenes can, if you're not the type of person that can just fall into a character immediately, the first couple scenes can feel a little like you're lost, right? Like you're not sure what to do next. I did okay because I can usually fall into a character pretty quickly, but when I played it with Gidget, I know she struggled the first couple scenes to sort of find her character. But by like scene 3, like we kind of knew who each character was, and the scenes were a lot easier to construct and sort of hit those things. And it, of course, every time you do a move, you have to pull a Jenga tile from the tower, and so that's building the tension, because the whole thing is like it's supposed to be this like, you know, emotional tension between these 2 characters, and so the Jenga tower is, you know, creating this tension in you, the player. And anytime you talk during the game, like I talk as your character, you have to touch the Jenga tower. So everything kind of feels a little dangerous during the game because you know, if you're not paying attention, you might knock over the Jenga tower, and that's when the game ends. So it just sort of like, you know, gives you an influx of tension or nervousness into this thing that's supposed to be kind of a nervous interaction.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Should be interesting.
But yeah.
When we're inevitably forced to play it.
We absolutely need to play it, Handor. There's a way to play it online. It's not as it's not like sitting there with a Jenga tower, but there is a way to play it online. So we'll have to record a session.
Tabletop Simulator, go.
Yeah, you could do it in Tabletop Simulator.
Try
I'll borrow
Jenga
Nightson's
top.
VR goggles, and we'll do it in Tabletop VR.
Map your table flip button to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
But yeah, so in my own games, that this is always something I'm considering. How do I make the conflicts feel fulfilling? How do I make sure that they are adding to the story that we're trying to tell, and not just some sort of like extra bloat that's sort of stuck on top. I've been talking for a while. Anybody have any thoughts?
I just like adding conflict to games. It doesn't have to be my own. I just like adding conflict. Play the mundane. What do? Run into a room by myself.
You won't. No. You admitted last episode that the major appeal for you doing that was knowing that you were beating me in the character whose main ability was big entrance.
Yeah. And that was adding conflict between you and me.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, does anyone have any last thoughts on GMless gaming?
I don't know enough.
I think it can work. It depends on the players. What it does well, it is as good as the players that you have in the table, obviously. And so, because of the issue it suffers with, in that if you don't have the quality people at your table to kind of drive it and make it interesting, is the exact reason that it shines. If you have a bunch of people at the table that are creative and do things that are interesting, so the reason it suffers is the same reason it's amazing. So I would say try it and see if it works with your group. If it doesn't, then try and do things that have maybe not even necessarily, because there's a middle ground, right? There's GMless, there's GM, and then there's somewhere in the middle where you have someone that's just kind of like doing the narrating and kind of help guide through, but not necessarily a GM.
Someone kind of facilitating the story.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't have to go on polar opposites. There's a happy medium if your table doesn't really do well with GMless. Try, if that doesn't work for you, try more of a narration thing, like Dialect. Actually, Dialect was fantastic. It's amazing. Like that may be more something that's a little bit more your table's comfort level. And then if neither one of those works, then hey, you've always got Trad.
Yeah.
Well, not to mention, if your group isn't as completely in tune with just complete improv, a game that is more rules heavy, or the rules do the driving of the narrative, will tend to work a little bit better. So there's even different flavors even within that, depending on what you're comfortable with.
Some people operate better within a guideline, within a structure.
Yeah.
There are games. A lot of Vincent and Maggie Baker's games are heavy prompts, where the prompts really drive the story. They give you lists to choose from, and they really handhold you all the way through the story. But if you're used to a more free-form game, you can end up feeling like constricted by those prompts. But if you're the type of person who's nervous, or you're not used to that kind of gameplay, I would definitely check out something like Firebrand's Mobile Frame Zero, or The King is Dead, because those are going to be like a safety net. They're going to have that safety net of those prompts there. And then if you find like, the prompts are too restricting, definitely dive into something like Fiasco or Dialect, or something that's a little more freeform.
We're going to have to put all those in the thing.
I don't know what Mobile Frame Zero is, but it sounds like a Gundam mech game.
It is. I was it's a Gundam mech RPG. So you
all right, cool. Well, so I know
Firebrand's Mobile Frame Zero is a Gundam.
Can I purchase that and make you guys play it?
It's like $5, I think, on their website. We'll put it in the. We'll put a link.
Yeah, if you're interested in GMless games, and this all seems very difficult for you, just play a tabletop game and role play your character. Like Gloomhaven totally would work. Probably many of the legacy games would work. Kingdom Death, if you hate yourself, you could absolutely role play in Kingdom Death.
Yeah, if you like dying constantly over and over again, and it's fun for you.
Yeah. Actually, truth be told, that does apply. Adding a bit of RP to any situation, hell, even video games.
One of my favorite games that I ever played that was like a board game that we RP'd over the top of it was Global Thermonuclear War, which is basically a game where you just throw nukes at the other, everyone plays a nation, and you throw nukes at each other, and like propaganda, and we were, there was like a table of like 10 of us, we were all RPing it. It was like midnight at a convention. It was hilarious.
Also very, never mind.
Fair enough.
Cool.
All right. Well, Kurt, where can people find us?
Oh, people can find us all over the internet, Nightson. They can head to pixelscandal.com where they can find back episodes of our shows. They can find links to our social media like our Twitter or our Facebook or our Instagram where we post things about this show. They can find links to our audio feed. They can in iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and all the places that you listen to podcasts. They can find links to our YouTube where you can find all of our video past episodes, and our Twitch where you can watch live and subscribe if you'd like to support the show. They can also find links to our Patreon at patreon.com/pixelscandal where they can become a patron and get cool patron rewards and help support us because every little bit helps because there are fees when you do a podcast and it's really nice when people chip in a little bit. But of course, that is not necessary. We love making this content just for you.
All right. Well, with that, have a nice rest of your Sunday, everyone.
Thanks,
See you,
everybody.
everybody.
For all.
Bye.